Imagine you're about to fall asleep when your brain suddenly decides to show you something useful. Not tomorrow's schedule, not the password you forgot, not where you left your keys. Instead, it brings back a conversation from 7 years ago. You remember the room, you remember what you said, you remember the silence immediately afterward, and somehow the memory feels almost as uncomfortable now as it did then. Your body reacts before you can stop it. You tense your face, pull the blanket over your head, and wonder why you said something so ridiculous. The strange part is that almost nobody else remembers it. The people who witnessed it may have forgotten the entire evening, but your brain has preserved that one awkward moment with extraordinary care. So why are embarrassing memories so difficult to erase? It is tempting to blame this on a brain that enjoys making us suffer, but your memory is not replaying the moment simply to punish you. It may be trying to solve a problem. The problem is that embarrassment is rarely just about an action. It is about what that action might have revealed to other people. Maybe you told a joke that nobody understood. Maybe you waved back at someone who was greeting the person behind you. Maybe you confidently used a word incorrectly. Nothing physically dangerous happened. You were not attacked, you did not lose anything valuable. And yet, your nervous system may have reacted as though something important had gone wrong. That's because humans do not evaluate mistakes only by their physical consequences. We also evaluate them socially. Did I look incompetent? Did they think I was strange? Did I violate a rule that everyone else seemed to understand? Did this change the way they see me? Embarrassment is one of the emotions that appears when we imagine ourselves from another person's point of view. You are not simply remembering what happened, you are remembering yourself being observed. That gives the event an unusual emotional structure. You are both the person inside the memory and, in a sense, a member of the audience watching that person. And emotional events often receive special treatment in memory. Emotion directs attention toward whatever seems important in the moment. It can strengthen certain details, especially the ones connected to the emotional meaning of the event. But this does not mean every part of an embarrassing memory is perfectly accurate. You may remember your own mistake clearly while barely remembering what happened before or after it. You may remember someone's expression, but not what they actually said. You may even become more confident in an interpretation that was never confirmed. A neutral face becomes disappointment. A short silence becomes total social rejection. A few people looking toward you becomes an entire room judging you. The brain does not store personal experiences like untouched video files. Each memory is reconstructed from fragments, sensations, emotions, interpretations, and information added later. So the scene replaying in your head may contain a real event, but that does not mean your present interpretation of it is completely reliable. And then something happens that makes the memory even harder to forget. You replay it. At first, replaying the moment can feel productive. You examine what you said, you imagine what you should have said, you create a better response and mentally insert it into the conversation. For a few seconds, it feels as though you are correcting the past, but the past does not change. Instead, you have retrieved the memory one more time, and the more often a memory is retrieved, the more available it can become in the future. You may think the memory keeps returning because it is strong, but part of the reason it stays strong may be that it keeps returning. Psychologists sometimes describe the repetitive analysis that follows a difficult social situation as post-event processing. The interaction has ended, but your mind continues reviewing it. You focus on how you sounded, what your face looked like, where you paused, and what other people might have thought. This can happen to almost anyone, although it can become especially intense for people who are socially anxious. The mind behaves as if there is still useful information hidden inside the event. Maybe one more replay will reveal the exact second when everything went wrong. Maybe one more imaginary conversation will produce the perfect response. Maybe one more analysis will guarantee that it never happens again. But rumination is not the same as problem solving. Problem solving moves toward an action. Rumination often moves in a circle. Why did I do that? Why am I always like this? What must they think of me? Why can't I stop thinking about it? The questions feel important, but they may be too broad or impossible to answer. Instead of producing a plan, they keep the emotional meaning of the memory active. This is one reason an embarrassing moment can feel strangely current, even when it happened years ago. Every replay allows you to experience a smaller version of the original emotion. That emotional response then confirms that the memory still matters. The memory causes discomfort, and the discomfort makes the memory seem important. It becomes another loop. But why would the brain build a system like this? Because remembering social mistakes can be useful. For most of human history, other people were not optional background characters. Survival depended heavily on cooperation, reputation, trust, and belonging. A social mistake could affect whether people shared information with you, defended you, worked with you, or included you. A brain that remembered socially costly behavior had an advantage. If speaking too aggressively damaged a relationship, remember it. If ignoring a group rule created conflict, remember it. If a certain kind of joke made everyone uncomfortable, perhaps do not repeat it at the next gathering. From this perspective, embarrassment is partly a learning signal. It marks a moment when your behavior and the social environment did not match. And because the lesson may matter later, the brain keeps the event accessible. The problem is that the system does not always distinguish between a serious social failure and an ordinary human awkward moment. It can treat both as valuable warnings. You forget dozens of conversations that went normally because nothing demanded correction. But the one time your voice cracked during a presentation becomes memorable precisely because it violated your expectations. You expected one version of yourself to appear, calm, competent, socially fluent. Instead, another version appeared. That mismatch matters. Embarrassing memories are often not painful only because of what happened. They are painful because they conflict with the person we were trying to be. A forgotten name threatens the idea that we are thoughtful. A failed joke threatens the idea that we are funny. An awkward introduction threatens the idea that we are confident. This is why two people can experience the same event very differently. One person mispronounces a word, laughs, and forgets about it. Another replays it for months. The difference may be the meaning attached to the event. If the event becomes evidence for a broader belief, I am incompetent, I am unlikable, or I always ruin social situations, it gains a larger role in the person's life story. It stops being one awkward moment. It becomes proof. And once a memory feels connected to identity, it becomes much more difficult to dismiss. But there is another reason these memories survive. They are unfinished. Not unfinished in reality, the event ended long ago, but unfinished emotionally. You never learned what the other people actually thought. You never received a clear explanation. You left the room with uncertainty. And the mind dislikes uncertain social information. A direct rejection might hurt, but at least it provides an answer. An ambiguous expression can generate dozens of interpretations. Perhaps they thought nothing of it. Perhaps they felt uncomfortable. Perhaps they forgot it 10 seconds later. Because you cannot know, the brain keeps reopening the case. There is an important contradiction here. Your brain may replay embarrassing moments to help you behave better in the future, but too much replaying can make future social situations harder. When you repeatedly imagine yourself failing, those memories become easier to retrieve the next time you enter a similar situation. Before giving a presentation, you remember the presentation that went badly. Before meeting new people, you remember the introduction that felt awkward. Before telling a joke, you remember the room that went silent. Now, the old event is no longer only a memory. It becomes a prediction. You start watching yourself more closely. How does my voice sound? What are my hands doing? Does my face look nervous? Am I making enough eye contact? This intense self-monitoring consumes attention that could have been directed toward the actual conversation. You become so busy observing yourself that it becomes harder to respond naturally. And if the interaction feels awkward, the brain may treat that as confirmation that the old warning was correct. This is how a memory that was supposed to prevent social mistakes can sometimes help recreate them. So how do you make an embarrassing memory stop returning? Trying to force it out of your mind is usually not a reliable solution. The command, "do not think about that moment," requires checking whether you are thinking about it, which brings the moment back again. A more useful shift is to change what happens when the memory arrives. First, separate the event from the verdict. "I said something awkward" is an event. "I am an awkward person" is a verdict. One describes a moment, the other turns that moment into an identity. Then ask what information you genuinely have. Do you know that everyone judged you, or are you reconstructing their thoughts? Would you interpret another person's identical mistake as harshly? Can you clearly remember embarrassing things other people did years ago? Usually, we overestimate how much attention other people give our mistakes because we experience our own lives from the center. Your embarrassment filled your awareness. For everyone else, it was one small event competing with their own worries, plans, and self-conscious thoughts. This does not mean nobody noticed. It means noticing is not the same as remembering, and remembering is not the same as condemning. It can also help to replace circular rumination with a specific conclusion. What, if anything, is the lesson? Maybe you interrupted someone and should listen more carefully. That is useful. Maybe you pronounced a word incorrectly. The lesson may simply be that humans occasionally pronounce words incorrectly. Not every painful memory contains a profound warning. Some are ordinary evidence that you once lacked information, misread a situation, or had a nervous moment in public. There's also a strange sign of growth hidden inside many embarrassing memories. You cringe at your past behavior because your present mind is different from the mind that created it. You understand now that you did not understand then. Your standards changed. Your social awareness improved. Your identity moved forward. The discomfort is partly evidence that the lesson has already been learned. Your brain may continue presenting the memory as though you still need the warning, even when you have outgrown the person who made the mistake. That is why the best response may not be to argue endlessly with the memory or erase it. It may be to recognize it. Yes, that happened. Yes, it was uncomfortable. No, it does not require another investigation tonight. The brain preserves embarrassing moments because they combine several things memory considers important: emotion, social evaluation, uncertainty, identity, and the possibility of learning. Then repetition keeps those memories accessible, sometimes long after their usefulness has expired. So when a 10-year-old mistake suddenly appears as you're trying to sleep, it doesn't necessarily mean the event was catastrophic. It may mean your brain once marked it as socially important and never received a convincing reason to remove the warning. The memory is not proof that everyone still remembers what you did. Most of them probably do not. It's proof that for one uncomfortable moment, you cared deeply about how you appeared in another person's mind. And perhaps the reason you can cringe at that past version of yourself is that you are no longer entirely that person. Research grounding, emotional meaning can shape autobiographical memory. Repeated retrieval and rumination can increase a memory's accessibility and personal importance, and post-event processing is particularly associated with anxiety after embarrassing social situations. The precise reason any particular memory returns cannot be diagnosed from the experience alone.